Napoleon Bonaparte made kings kneel and empires crumble. The man was a verified military genius who reshaped the entire map of Europe like it was a pile of Lego bricks. But behind the epic portraits and the grand sweeping history of the early 1800s lies a much weirder reality. The god of war was once chased away by a horde of domestic rabbits. He likely lost his final and most important battle because his backside hurt too much to sit on a horse, and he once failed to end his own life because his emergency poison had literally gone stale. The Napoleonic Wars were brutal, bloody, and world-changing, but they were also, at times, absolutely ridiculous. Today, we're looking at the 10 dumbest glitches from one of history's most serious conflicts. Let's look at the footnotes that your history teacher skipped. Number 1. The Great Rabbit Rebellion of 1807. In 1807, Napoleon decided to celebrate the Treaty of Tilsit with a fancy rabbit hunt. He was at the peak of his power, having just pacified his enemies. His chief of staff, Berthier, wanted to make sure the boss had a good time, so he organized everything with military precision, or so he thought. He gathered thousands of rabbits in cages, ready to be released for the emperor to shoot. It was supposed to be a relaxing afternoon of elite sport. Here is where the glitch happened. Instead of wild rabbits, the staff accidentally bought domesticated farm bunnies. Wild rabbits see a human and run for their lives. Farm bunnies see a human and think, "Oh, it's the guy with the carrots." When those cages opened, the rabbits didn't scatter. They charged. Thousands of fluffy, hungry monsters swarmed Napoleon. They climbed up his legs, bit through his royal coat, and refused to be intimidated by the man who had just conquered Prussia. Napoleon's guards tried beating them back with sticks and whips, but the bunnies were relentless. The most powerful man in Europe literally had to flee to his carriage. The rabbits followed him, leaping into the coach as he tried to slam the door. Napoleon retreated from the field that day, defeated not by the British or the Russians, but an army of long-eared farm animals who just wanted lunch. Number 2. Waterloo's most painful footnote, the hemorrhoid theory. The Battle of Waterloo in 1815 was the ultimate showdown, the season finale of the Napoleonic Wars. It was Napoleon versus Wellington, with the fate of Western civilization on the line. But according to a persistent historical theory, Napoleon lost partly because of his hemorrhoids. Seriously. The emperor was reportedly suffering from a flare-up so agonizing that he couldn't sit on his horse to properly survey the mud-soaked battlefield or command his troops with his usual speed. Imagine the glitch in history. One of the greatest military minds of all time, the man who revolutionized artillery and troop movement, was sidelined because sitting down hurt too much. Some historians argue this medical disaster delayed his orders by crucial hours, hours that allowed the Prussians to arrive and tip the scales. He allegedly spent the morning in a fog of pain, possibly taking laudanum, which clouded his judgment. While we can't blame the entire defeat on his backside, Wellington was a genius and French coordination was already a mess. It remains one of history's least dignified what-ifs. Number 3. The worst group hangover, the invasion of Ireland. In 1798, France attempted to open a second front against Britain by invading Ireland. About 1,000 French soldiers under General Humbert de Magnier landed at Killala Bay to support an Irish rebellion. This was supposed to be a tactical masterpiece. Instead, the French troops discovered two things: Irish hospitality and Irish whiskey. The local rebels were so thrilled to see their allies that the celebration started before the marching did. The glitch: instead of coordinating a strategic strike against the British, the entire force got absolutely hammered. Accounts suggest that General Humbert spent the next morning desperately trying to drag his hungover troops into some semblance of order. They managed to win a few small skirmishes, but the momentum was gone. The British surrounded them, the rebellion collapsed, and the great Franco-Irish alliance ended not with a bang, but with a collective headache and the realization that you shouldn't drink with the Irish if you have a war to win the next morning. Number 4. Fortune the Pug, the dog who bullied an emperor. Napoleon's first wife, Josephine, had a pug named Fortune. This dog wasn't just a pet, he was the unofficial bodyguard of the empress. On the couple's wedding night, as the conqueror of Italy tried to climb into the marriage bed, Fortune decided that this random Corsican general was an intruder. The pug attacked, biting Napoleon on the leg and drawing blood. When Napoleon asked Josephine to remove the dog, she reportedly told him that if he wanted to sleep in the bed, he'd have to share it with the pug. For the rest of their marriage, Napoleon had to negotiate for space with a 15-pound dog that refused to acknowledge his imperial authority. He later complained that on the night he was supposed to be celebrating his union, he was instead bleeding from a dog bite while being glared at by a flat-faced animal. Even the man who ruled millions couldn't win an argument against a determined pug. Number 5. Tapping the Admiral. Nelson's preservation fluid. Admiral Horatio Nelson died at the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805, shot by a French sniper. To get his body back to England for a state funeral, the ship's surgeon had to get creative with preservation. He placed Nelson's corpse in a large barrel filled with brandy, or rum depending on the account, to stop decomposition during the long sea voyage. The glitch occurred during the journey home. Sailors at the time were legendary drinkers, and brandy was a luxury. Rumors have persisted for 200 years that the crew secretly drilled holes in the barrel and drank the preservative fluid, essentially drinking the juice of their dead hero. This gave birth to the naval slang, tapping the admiral, which means to sneak a drink from a barrel. When they arrived in England and opened the barrel, it was significantly less full than it should have been. Whether they actually drank it or it just evaporated is a mystery, but the Navy has been making jokes about it ever since.
Number 6. The Imperial Card Shark, Napoleon's cheating habit. Napoleon absolutely hated losing, at anything. This included casual card games with his staff and visiting diplomats. He was a chronic and blatant cheater. He would peek at hands, change the rules mid-game, or simply declare himself the winner if the score wasn't going his way. The funniest part of this glitch is that everyone knew he was doing it. His marshals and ministers would sit there, watching the Emperor of France fumble an extra card out of his sleeve like a desperate uncle at Thanksgiving, and they said absolutely nothing. Why? Because the last guy who corrected Napoleon ended up commanding a freezing garrison in the middle of nowhere. Everyone worked very hard to lose convincingly, so the emperor would stay in a good mood. He won almost every game he ever played, surrounded by people who were essentially professional losers for the sake of their careers. Number 7. The Don't Wash Letter, Napoleon's pungent romance. Napoleon wrote some of the most passionate love letters in history to Josephine. Most are beautiful, but one line has achieved legendary status for being, well, a bit gross. While away on a military campaign, Napoleon allegedly wrote to his wife, "I will be home in 3 days, don't wash." He reportedly adored her natural scent and wanted the most authentic Josephine experience possible. While bathing wasn't a daily ritual in the late 18th century, Josephine actually didn't share this preference. She was famous for loving heavy perfumes and bathing regularly to smell like roses. This creates a hilarious relationship dynamic. The man who reorganized the legal codes of Europe spent his downtime writing letters home requesting that his wife remain funky, while she spent her time trying to avoid smelling like what he wanted. Romance is truly a complicated glitch. Number 8. Kidnapping the Pope, Napoleon's solution to church problems. In 1809, Napoleon had a Pope problem. Pope Pius VII was refusing to cooperate with French policies and was generally being a thorn in the emperor's side. Napoleon's solution wasn't a diplomatic summit, it was a kidnapping.
French soldiers literally dragged the elderly pontiff out of the Vatican in the middle of the night and hauled him off to France as a prisoner. For the next 5 years, the leader of the Catholic Church was moved around like a high-value hostage. Napoleon wanted the Pope to sign off on his divorce and give him more control over the clergy. Pius VII, showing an incredible backbone, mostly just said no while in captivity. The Pope actually outlasted Napoleon's empire, eventually returning to Rome after the emperor fell. It's one of the few times in history a world leader decided that if the church wouldn't listen, he'd just put the church in the back of a wagon and drive away. Number 9. The can opener glitch. 50 years too late. Feeding an army is a nightmare, so in 1795 the French government offered a cash prize for a better way to preserve food. Nicolas Appert figured out that sealing food in glass jars and boiling them worked perfectly. By 1810, they moved to tin cans. It was a massive technological leap for Napoleon's troops. There was just one tiny problem. Nobody had invented the can opener yet. The can opener wouldn't be patented until 1855, nearly 50 years after the food was put in cans. For half a century, French and British soldiers carried these amazing modern rations and had to open them with bayonets, rocks, rifle butts, or literally shooting them open. They had the technology to preserve the meal, but not the technology to conveniently access it. It's the ultimate glitch, soldiers hacking at their dinner like cavemen attacking a metal coconut. Number 10. The affection pinch, Napoleon's aggressive love language. When Napoleon liked you, he had a very specific way of showing it. He would pinch you, hard. He would grab his generals by the ear, the cheek, or the nose, and twist until they were nearly in tears. In his mind, this was a sign of imperial favor. If the emperor was twisting your earlobe, it meant you were doing a great job. The problem was that Napoleon didn't always know his own strength, and he also used the same move to humiliate people he was annoyed with. His inner circle lived in constant fear of a reward. Imagine winning a major battle, reporting to the emperor, and having the most powerful man in Europe grab your face and squeeze until your eyes watered. You just had to stand there, smile, and say, "Thank you, sire." His marshals walked around with bruised ears for a decade, never sure if the next imperial greeting would require an ice pack. Napoleon was a giant of history, a man who moved pieces across the world like a grand master. But as we've seen today, even the grandest players are subject to the glitches of reality, whether that's a horde of bunnies, a missing can opener, or a very angry pug. History isn't just about treaties and boundaries. It's about the human moments that make the past feel relatable, messy, and sometimes perfectly stupid. The next time you see a stern portrait of Napoleon with his hand in his waistcoat, just remember, he might just be trying to hide the fact that a rabbit bit him. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history's weirdest moments, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments which of these glitches was the most shocking to you. We'll see you in the next one.